Well, it's actually official. Mark Carney sworn in as MP and Prime Minister. And over half of Canadians have major mortgage concerns. And what is the future of the NDP? All that and more on the Really Big Show. And we do have a jam-packed show today, like jam-packed. Beautiful day here in the Okanagan as well, a little bit cooler. How are things looking out in the nation capital? I'm Jim Csek with NowMedia. I forgot to tell you that. And with me is Iain Burns. Actually, visible Iain Burns, our managing editor all the way out there in the nation's capital.
Yeah, it's very wet, very bleak. The weather is just, it's just been awful. It's been a washout this spring.
Well, we got new segment intros here. We're getting kind of fancy. Our budget is still small and meager, but we still managed to get things done. So we're going to kick it off first with our kind of national and international news here. Look at that. Pretty spank, eh?
It was pretty dramatic, wasn't it? Let's get ready for the drama.
There you go. Mark Carney officially sworn in there, showing off his pen that he used to sign the thing. Again, he should get that big Sharp if he wants to do those Donald Trump kind of look-alike things.
Well, it makes a change, though, doesn't it? Because this time the thing that he signed actually was of
real.
Consequence. It actually mattered, yeah.
It was actually a real thing. So, yeah, I think they're talking about making that pen. I didn't put the clip in because they were talking about making that pen into a ring or something that, and he asked if they could do it for him. But he did also send out his priorities to his caucus there. His 7 priorities. Did you have a look at those yet?
I did, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely nothing new or interesting at all, really, but it's just it's basically just a formalized rehash of his campaign points.
Yeah. Did you want to go through them real quick? Or, I mean, they are basically what they were talking about in the campaign for sure, right?
Yeah. Well, number 1, establishing a new economic and security relationship with the United States. And then a dig at America and by saying strengthening our collaboration with reliable trading partners. Then there's the thing about getting rid of interprovincial trade barriers and very, very vague comments about potential energy developments that are expediting nation-building projects. Just, you know, the kind of language that you hear in the HR meeting. Bringing down costs for Canadians and helping them to get ahead. That doesn't mean anything. No. Making housing more affordable by unleashing the power of public-private cooperation. Catalyzing a modern housing industry and creating new careers in the skilled trade. Again, that's waffle.
Don't forget that big word, catalyzing. Catalyzing a modern housing industry.
Yeah, good for them. Protecting Canadian sovereignty and keeping Canadians safe by strengthening the armed forces. Okay. Well, again, that's very vague. We don't have any information whatsoever on how that's going to happen, but go on then. Go on, lads. Attracting the best talent in the world to help build our economy. That's kind of we never really mentioned much about that. That's a new thing. And then returning overall immigration rates to sustainable levels. What does that mean? Sustainable levels. This is imprecise language used so that you can fail and then say, no, but I never said anything. I said sustainable. And I'm telling you that sustainable is this. Therefore, I haven't failed. So shut up.
Yeah. And then Jolie did say that she was going to attract the best and brightest from the United States by offering them half the pay or a third of the pay and double the taxation.
And much worse weather. And then the last one here, spending less on government operations so that Canadians can invest more. I mean, build the strongest economy in the G7. This is all waffle. Nothing here can be measured. There's no like build 500,000 houses or make it so that, there's nothing concrete. There are no promises here. The only promise, if anything, that can actually be measured is build the strongest economy in the G7. Okay, which will almost certainly fail. But he says build the strongest economy. So that doesn't necessarily mean the fastest growing, certainly doesn't mean the largest. It just means strongest. So he can say, oh no, we actually do have the strongest economy in the G7. Have you seen the percentage of women in employment? Have you seen how many treaties we've signed with First Nations? That's what we call strong, because we just make things up as we go along. Ha ha. I mean, it's just a lot of, honestly, I almost feel like I've shamed myself by even reading that out. It's a complete waste of time. It's just total guff, waste of paper.
We do have a clip of the Prime Minister talking about making things clear. I'll just leave it at that, and then see if you're clear after he's done talking about making it clear.
We had, for almost half a century, we as Canada, a relationship with the Americans which were a steady process of deepening integration. Deepening integration in economics. We went from free trade deal through to CUSMA, deepening integration in military aspects. And that process of deepening integration is over. We are in a position now where we cooperate when necessary, but not necessarily cooperate. So we have other options for that cooperation. We are pursuing those other options. You will see a very different set of partnerships, security and economic, going forward. But to be absolutely clear, when it is in Canada's interest, first best interest, to cooperate with the Americans, to strike deals with the Americans, relationships, and particularly in examples like ballistic missile defense, that may be the best option, and if so, we will pursue that.
So there you go. That question is regarding the Golden Dome, because like Mark Carney said, our relationship with the United States was over, and now there's a lot of backpedaling on that. To be clear, I would like to be clear that I wasn't clear. I don't know.
What do you think? What do you think this means? This is new, isn't it?
What's that?
Doing this gesture.
Yeah, I've seen that. Coming together.
I would say about Mark Carney, he's obviously an intelligent man. There's no point having that conversation. I think it's true that he's an intelligent man, but he doesn't half know how to sound stupid. He sounds like an idiot when he speaks like that, but I don't know if he realizes how dumb he sounds when he just waffles around with these undergraduate level words, like 3 or 4 syllable words. Don't you realize how stupid you sound? Just speak clear English. Prove you're obviously intelligent. Show it. Be intelligent. That's what I would tell him in the rehearsals anyway.
I think what he's trying to do, though, is kind of portray to the people that he said that the relationship with America is over, and now he's kind of backpedaling on it and kind of hiding in it under a little smoke and a bunch of like language that doesn't make much sense.
Absolutely, that is what he's doing. But there are ways to do that and still sound like you're not, in double-digit IQ land. There are ways to do that, and that's not it. To just waffle on in that sort of hopeless, like he's speaking in a way, he's bored of himself, That's no way to speak. If you're going to say something, it can't be boring to you, What are other people supposed to make of it if you're bored by it? But also, just not even taking people slightly seriously, not taking people seriously enough to even expect them to want clarity or expect clarity. Just come out with absolute waffle. It's just it demeans the office of Prime Minister, I think, and I would hope that his advisors in the background are going to sort of say, "Come on, Sparky, stop doing that. It's not cool."
The more honest approach would be, look, I won the election with the fear of Trump while I was having discussions with him saying that I was going to do that. Now that that's over, we need to continue with our integration with the United States, and especially we have to rely on them for protection. They won't be rolling tanks in Canada. They never were going to roll tanks in Canada. And that's just the way it is. I won. So there you go.
Yeah, so eat it. Now I'm the Prime Minister. I mean, the thing is, that comment that he made, which is just such sophistry, it's such a clownish remark to make, which is something like, we'll cooperate with them when it's necessary, but we won't necessarily always cooperate with them, or something along those lines.
Yeah. Just word salad. Word salad.
Well, just meaningless, really. But if you want to talk about necessity, I mean, there's a reason that being the Prime Minister of Canada is basically like your job is basically as chief negotiator with the United States. That's basically your life and your job. And then now and then you've got to bat aside some mad Quebecois demands and things like that. There's a reason that that's the case because Canada, I mean, necessity is a word you can use if you want, but I think it's even beyond that. There is no Canada without the US. You know, it's everything. You have to do. It's the ultimate necessity. You have to do so much business with the US. So that I think the fact that he won this election on this complete lie that we were gonna separate from the US and go off and be our own dudes. I mean, he's just got himself in trouble now, hasn't he? And it completely jars with reality. And so now he's sat there like a naughty undergraduate that hasn't submitted an essay on time, and he's trying to explain why. it's it's just it's farcical, I think.
From Blacklock's friends of ours, 53% of Canadian mortgage holders concerned about defaulting, says a new CMHC report. More mortgage consumers are using one type of credit to pay off another. You got to love that kiting, using credit cards and that. That is not a good place for many Canadians to be right now.
Well, the federal government is in that position, so why not? Why not the population? We might as well borrow to pay interest. That's what the Canadian government's doing.
Yeah, and it's a majority though. 53% said they're concerned about defaulting on the mortgage, and a lot of them, you know, it's the mortgages that were kind of taken out in 2020 and stuff like that that were just when property values were high. And a lot of these mortgages are noir. We're going to look at that next year. And yeah, it's not a good situation right now. We can take a look at this this next layout there. So 86% of Canadians who bought a home in the last 5 years now underwater. So that's, you know, like when mortgage rates were, I mean, so when property values were really high, and Tiff Macklin said, go out and buy that home. Don't worry, Canada will not be raising rates into the foreseeable future. And lo and behold, 19-fold increase, unprecedented increase. And then the property values have started to drop, and people can't afford the mortgages. A lot of them coming up for renewal as well. So, and renters are in the same boat. Renters, who represent about 41% of Canadians, also struggling to keep up with their financial commitments.
And we're told by some very special individuals that we're in a very very strong economy, and we should be more grateful, and that we should, you know, worship at the altar of the status quo, which has benefited so many people for so long.
And you know who's waiting there to backstop that, to pick up the homes at default? Companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, and Brookfield. These corporations are buying up single-family homes like crazy. So,
well, maybe the Unifor president can ask for those to be expropriated.
Seize them.
Bob's your uncle. Yeah, we'll have them.
You put this poll in there. It's a Canadian press story. Most Canadians feel attached to the country, though only half trust the government. Well, that's.
To be honest, the biggest surprise there is that it's half. I can't believe there's that many.
Which half is that?
Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, it also quite interesting. It finds that Alberta had the lowest. People in Alberta, Albertans had the lowest connection to Canada, 70%.
And no
surprise there.
And no surprise on the young people either.
Well, the thing is, we have a social contract, don't we? Whether that's, I mean, formal or informal. It's much more informal, isn't it, than anything else? But it does exist. And it hasn't really, I mean, all these people, young people, they signed the contract, metaphorically speaking, and held up their end of the bargain, but they haven't been given what they were promised, have they? And that's basically the crux of Pierre Poilievre's campaign to be prime minister, isn't it? It's like, you know, Canada's broken. The deal is broken. You deserve a house and a well-paying job and all the rest of it. And certainly that we're going to talk about it a bit later, aren't we, with the students? But that seems to have really resonated with young people. And this poll here just adds
Yeah, let's
just
look
adds to that, really, doesn't
yeah,
it? That the young people and old people,
yeah.
they've diverged on priorities, and it's
You put,
mostly to do with economics.
you can put that one up there, the young person, the young people poll there. And then, like you said, that is a lot of just like it seems like a broken promise to our youth.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. The difference is very, very interesting. And when you look through on this exit poll from Abacus, it's older people ranked the Trump and US issue a lot more, a lot higher than the younger people. Something that we already sort of knew, really, and data has been shown that for a while now. But that is interesting, isn't it? Young people, because these are like grade 4 to 12, I think they said.
Yeah.
So not your usual conservative supporters, really. Not, at least not in the sort of, not in the traditional analysis of Canadian political parties. But that just goes to show how profound the change has been. Where the Liberal Party is like the pensioners' party, it's the seniors' party, isn't it? It's the party of the status quo, and the Conservative Party is the insurgent party that's trying to like change things. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, and we talked about this already, and you know where Mark Carney kind of stumbled around in his dramatic change of heart regarding cooperation with the U.S. After Donald Trump revealed those plans for the Golden Dome missile defense system, and you know had to backpedal a little bit on that one.
So we can't trust them. Sorry, in the words of Mark Carney, they want to break us so they can own us. However, let's have a conversation with them about paying about 20% or so of a 170 billion US dollar missile defense system. That sounds like a good idea. And, you know, in the NORAD system anyway, and the Northcom and all these things, the Americans have complete control over that anyway. They decide. I mean, I only learned quite recently when I read a book by Annie Jacobsen, which I would recommend to everybody, about nuclear war. I only learned recently that the Americans actually have control of the trigger completely. We don't even have a voice in the room when it comes to whether or not they shoot down missiles that come into NORAD territory. How crackers is that? And then Carney's like, "Yep, let's talk about more of that, even though you want to break us so you can own us."
Well, let's be fair though, because if they had to consult with Canadians, we'd want to set up a committee while this missile was incoming. They'd have to set up a committee and then talk to all
Can you
the.
imagine Melanie Jolie on the phone, like
And then you have to
deciding whether
talk
or
to
not
all
to
the
shoot down the missile?
all the stakeholders, and then decide whether it's in the best interest. And depending on where that missile is landing, and maybe some of those people deserve it.
Well, yeah, and the missile, you have to wonder if the missile is flying over the Northwest Territories, so that's Inuit territory. Obviously, you've got to ask the Inuit for permission to shoot down that missile first. And then before you get a response from them, it'll probably have moved down into Ojibwe territory or something. Then you have to ask them, obviously, can we shoot down this missile, please? It's very tricky.
And then some people probably deserve it, like Alberta. They'd probably say, "Well, we don't need to do that one." I'm making a joke. Anyway, the NDP, BC seen as the final frontier for as the federal NDP as leadership question looms, and this is our friend that I've interviewed a couple times, former NDP candidate Cade Desjardins.
I reckon that they've interviewed him because they've seen our stories. They must have done, because he was our guy. But they've probably looked around for NDP candidates or former MPs or whatever that have actually said vote for the Liberals, and they've found him at the top of the list on our humble little website.
We did that interview where he came out in support of Stephen Fear, the Liberal candidate, and said that the don't vote, he suggested, do not vote for the NDP. And then, he took some shots in that interview as well on Jagmeet Singh, and, in this story he did as well. He just said that you can't really be seen as a symbol for the working class when you're walking around the airport with a Versace bag or a Gucci bag, whatever the case may be. There you go. That's what...
I think, right, okay, that's one thing you can say. I get that. I get those criticisms of Singh, and it is a bit unwise, isn't it? But they're talking about reconnecting to the working class. If you want to reconnect to the working class, it's not actually that complicated. The best way to do it is advocate policies that the working class want.
Yeah.
The working class have never wanted the NDP's ridiculous hobby horse policies, like being extremely sort of like vehemently, aggressively anti-Israel and going around and adopting all of these like culturally left-wing, progressive, whatever you want to call it, policies. The working class don't care about that. That's why they voted for the Conservative Party, you know? So if you want to get back in the game and you think the working class is the answer, you know, it's beyond ditching the Versace bag. You know, you have to ditch the middle class Versace policies, if you will. You have to get rid of that.
I think that one of the things that Polyev accomplished, and maybe to his detriment, was basically the like the strong voice of getting rid of the far left in politics, and even the Liberals had to move more to the center, and that was to the detriment because most of those voters went to the Liberals.
Yeah, well, you just together, I guess. They just rendered the Liberals and Conservatives together rendered the NDP almost pointless, didn't they? And based on how Jagmeet Singh had arranged that party, what it stood for, he basically rendered them, you know,
and
defunct.
So many unions came out in support of Pierre Polyev, which is typically where the strength of the NDP was. But like they left that a long time ago and went for very, very woke policies that most people, like they were at the 10%, you know what I mean? Like they're supporting the 10% of what people wanted, if that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a failure. It's a failure of strategy, isn't it?
That number might be high. The Fraser Institute put out a thing. Doubling Canadian natural gas production and exporting to Asia could reduce global emissions by 630 million tons, nearly as much as Canada produces in a year. We've been saying that forever. But Justin Trudeau...
89% apparently. 89% of Canada's emissions could be kind of offset, let's call it offset, by exporting LNG to Asia and by doing so displacing coal. I mean, we've heard that for a long time, haven't we? Danielle Smith says that quite a lot, but nobody listens to her when she talks about that kind of thing.
The Trudeau Liberals definitely never listened, and Stephen Guilbeault definitely never listened. Chrystia Freeland never listened to that. And all they said was it was Canada's responsibility to stop and stop producing oil and gas, and also that there's no business case for LNG.
But there's no, I mean, I don't want to get too agitated here, but there's no business case either for massive subsidies for wind turbines and solar panels. There is no business case for that at all. It's done because, in the words of the people that support it, it will help save the planet. But so would this.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, if anything, this would do it quicker and to a greater degree,
more effectively too. The Western premiers finished talks on trade. Not much I didn't get a lot of information out of this, but and talking about Arctic security in Yellowknife. Well, the Golden Dome would be the biggest piece of that security, I guess, but that's a ways off. Space Force and all that stuff. But again, you know, obviously Premier Smith wants those pipelines, and Scott Moe wants to form a united front to press Carney on strengthening the criminal code, and all that David Eby wants to do is virtue signaling and give Danielle Smith some gears on Western separation.
Well, and Scott Moe, I guess, implied, because Saskatchewan tends to come top of these polls, doesn't it, when it comes to separatism? But I would just say another thing that Eby's tried to mention is how great the Western Canadian economy is, which I just found a little bit amusing, really, that the idea that BC is in that party. It's not really, is it? BC's economy is much more like Ontario's, like just a mess. It's almost like neutral, not really here or there. It's Alberta and Saskatchewan that have the good, like very decent demographics by Western standards, like more young people, and it's those two provinces as well that bring in vast amounts of foreign currency through their exports.
Well, here's a glimmer of hope, the first one I've seen in a while for British Columbia, though, and it's CN, obviously with the port there and transporting goods across Canada, to invest $615 million in British Columbia and build capacity and power sustainable growth. There you go. They spent lots of money last year. In 2024, they spent about $554 million in British Columbia on track maintenance and key infrastructure initiatives, but they're looking to spend another $615 million. I mean, rail is such an important thing for this second largest landmass nation in the world. Rail is obviously how we move a lot of stuff. And trucks, if you've ever driven between Vancouver and Calgary, you'll notice that much of that traffic is semis that burn diesel fuel.
Which is just, when you actually really think about that, that is ridiculous, isn't it? It's so silly that we do that over the Rocky Mountains. It's just absurd, really. When we could double down on trains. It does seem a little bit silly, doesn't it?
We
Very
should
dangerous.
have a massive rail system, even bigger than we do have. And, that's a decent investment, I guess. That's a lot cheaper than what Trudeau and them had pitched for the rail between Quebec City and Toronto. Only $650.
I'm sure Chrystia Freeland is chomping at the bit for her big announcement, her big speech, because that's obviously going to be her baby, isn't it? It's going to be how she's going to get in the news all the time and get all the attention that she needs. So when she comes out and announces it, I bet you that the price tag will blow your head off, because it's always safe to double or treble the price, the cost that they initially put forward anyway. So it'll probably already be gigantic. Like, God knows what. I don't even want to predict.
We're going to see if we can get an interview with somebody from CN. They do employ about just under 2,700 employees here in British Columbia, and they operate about just under 2,800 miles of rail. It's odd that they put it in miles instead of kilometers. They've seen now they're a Canadian company. You must have missed that metric thing, right? There you go. And then I'm just going to move this next one down. We have it later here. Skip that next slide, but we're going to play this the feds. This is a Fox news story where this huge Amazon crime syndicate. I'm going to play this clip. This is in our yeah. Go ahead, play this clip.
The police with a warrant. Come to the front door.
Fox News exclusively capturing this early morning bust of an Iranian-born man living in an upscale Los Angeles area neighborhood, luxury SUVs out front.
Police! Hands up! Hands up!
The suspect walks out of his home shoeless, surrendering on charges of interstate theft.
Stop! 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 Hands on your head.
Allegedly part of a scheme that stole $83 million in Amazon goods.
This particular individual is here on a visa. He's engaged in a tremendous amount of illegal activity.
There you go. Porch Pirates, $83 million with Amazon stuff.
Mad. And Iranians as well. They're getting a bad rap lately. They're in Europe as well. Almost every time there's like an arrest of some kind of, organized crime or whatever, it tends to be Iranian these days. I don't know what is going on there. I don't know if they're associated with the regime or something like that.
And the fallout from Jake Tapper's book, Original Sin, it could well be the biggest story of the century, especially in the political world, of what was really going on. We got a little clip here with Stephen A. Smith here. We're going to play this.
Hey, liberal media is dead. This is what he was talking about. The Mark Levins, the Sean Hannitys, the Clay Travises of the world and others, the Megyn Kellys of the world. What can we say to them at this particular moment in time? If you are a Democrat who bought in to the Democratic Party, willing to engage in cancel culture, when it came to anybody who would dare verbalize a dissenting opinion to what they were putting out there, what can we say? CNN was clearly guilty of it. We saw Joe Scarborough going on MSNBC with Morning Joe. We saw him on the national airwaves raving about President Biden's health and acuity. We saw it. But there was clearly evidence to the contrary. And when that evidence was revealed, people on the left engaged in condemnation towards those who had the guts to tell what clearly has now become the truth. You can get into the
There you go. Sean Hannity had a piece too that says you need to stop watching CNN, MSNBC, and says that we were telling you the truth the whole time and they were lying to you. There's a bunch of people coming on this, and Stephen A. Smith is typically, well, is a Democrat, and is typically, but obviously they got a lot of egg on their face, and we have a lot of that here in Canada too. When you're like the stuff you see with your eyes and your ears, and then they're told you that that's just cheap fakes and lies and all that stuff. This is going to be a tough one. This cover-up, and then who was actually running the White House. This is a big story. Not our story, but a huge story. This is a massive story.
It is a very big story. And what a strange situation that it's taken like 5 years to get here, you know?
But, you know, like with Watergate,
never, I suppose.
With Watergate, it was the press that actually broke that story. In this case, the press was part of that story.
Yeah, because the press, you know, it's quite a boring comment, but I'll make it anyway because I mean it's an obvious comment. But the press in the US and Canada and other countries in the West is fundamentally liberal left, and they defend liberal left parties. You know, it's not that much of a surprise, really, is it? So in Canada, the press
That's a huge.
Generally speaking. Yeah. The press supports the Liberal Party of Canada, and in the US, they support the Democratic Party. So when the Democratic Party installed a clearly incompetent, incapable man as president, he had to be defended, didn't he? He had to be defended against Trump, basically, and that's how they justified it. It's quite. I mean, it is a bit distasteful, isn't it? But back in you know, during Watergate. I mean, that was obviously a Republican president that was targeted there, so it was easy for them to do it. It was natural for them to do it. It was Richard Nixon as well, like the hated Richard Nixon. But even then, back then in the 70s and earlier in the 60s during the Vietnam War, the press were a lot more, you know, they were a lot more sensible, I think, and they were willing to criticize Democrats as well. But those days are gone now. I don't think we have the kind of societal trust anymore to expect that.
The Canadian media hands are not clean in this as well. They ran cover for it as well when there was challenged, and they, you know, and I've had arguments with some of the local reporters here, and saying if you dared say anything, question, you know, his acuity and stuff like that, you were accused of being a Trumpist and all, and they used that to basically shut people up, right? And said that you weren't allowed to ask, you weren't allowed to question it. And in Canada, it's a little bit worse because Bill C-18 has basically compromised most media outlets because now they're at the begging bowl with the government to get some scraps.
Yeah. And in Canada is a much more like hierarchical society as well, I think, where people are a lot more deferent and people are kind of, you know, they're told to shut up by their betters, basically. They're social betters. And often they're like, oh, yes, yes, my lord. There's a lot of that in Canada where they kind of, you're looked upon as a kind of vulgar upstart, and that's exactly how they look at anybody really that questions the orthodoxy, and that includes like the truckers, for example, anybody that was against the response to COVID-19 and many other things. Really, you're just ostracized, and you're looked upon as some kind of like leper or something, aren't you? Like a social leper. But America's kind of too big and too democratic and too boisterous, let's say, for that to be possible.
And they have alternative voices in there, and that's what, if you watch that whole clip from Stephen A. Smith, they have alternative voices that people are trusting more. There is, you know, like Fox has the biggest listenership, and you talk about Fox in Canada, people right away, probably even some of the comments here, you know, how dare you listen to Fox News? Fox News has the biggest audience for cable down there. And then there's voices like Joe Rogan, Megyn Kelly, Stephen Smith, lots and lots of voices that have big voices down there that are even bigger than the media outlets now. And so you get that. We don't get a lot of that here in Canada. Like we have like two national media outlets, CBC and CTV, and Global struggling, very much struggling. And you know, you got some other ones that say they have a national focus, like a National Post, which would be more right-leaning, and the Globe and Mail, which is a subscription-based platform. So there's not a lot of choice other than us. You can come here and listen to Iain and I.
Yeah,
we get no
why
money.
not, eh?
We got no money from the government, so we don't need to toe their line. Even though some people will actually, say all kinds of really nasty things. I post lots on LinkedIn too, and I get called a lot of nasty things. So just for questioning what's going on, the economics of it for sure, because it's all about the economy. Stupid. Everything comes down to the economy. Like, the rest of this stuff is just nonsense. Let's listen to our finance minister, Francois Philippe Champagne here, explain what he's going to do with our money.
Bonjour tout le monde, c'est un grand plaisir de vous accueillir ici aujourd'hui pour la première rencontre du G7. So good afternoon everyone. Delighted to be with all of you. Welcome to Canada for those who travel from afar. This is going to be our very first press conference, and I have the privilege and the honor to be with Sergei Marchenko, my dear colleague from Ukraine. We had the chance to meet earlier today, and I think it is very telling to the world that we have our Ukrainian friend with us for the G7 summit. It sends a strong message to the world that we are, all of us, recommitting to support Ukraine. We're going to hold Russia to account. And we're also going to talk about what we're going to be doing in terms of reconstruction. The discussion we had at the international level, there's a moral imperative for all of us to support our Ukrainian friend in reconstruction. They fought for democracy, not only for them, but for the world. And we're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with our Ukrainian friend to make sure that we bring an end to this conflict, but at the same time that we look forward in reconstruction. So this morning I had the privilege with Sergei to meet a number of pension funds and a number of very important investors to look at what's going to come next. You may have seen the report from the IMF that the reconstruction effort in Ukraine is going to be north of $500 billion US dollar over a decade in order to rebuild this country, build back better together. And today was a moment that we could share. There's a lot that we could do together. We talked about energy infrastructure. We talked about infrastructure like roads, ports, railway. We talked about defense technologies. We talked about energy. Canada is an energy superpower. So what we can do with them with respect to hydro, to nuclear energy, also to oil and gas, and what we can bring together to this table. So it was a very interesting moment. We talked also how we could work together eventually to share best practices in building a pension system.
There you go. $500 billion.
I must say, it doesn't fill me with confidence. I don't think I just don't think he's that smart, really. Sorry, Champagne.
No. Let's just move on. This is a Globe and Mail reporter, Robin Urbach, says we needed a by-election in Terrebonne. I wonder where we're going to get that decision.
Yeah, that can't be allowed to continue. I suppose they're just trying to find out if, will people just stop speaking about it? And if so, we'll just pretend it never happened. But I don't think that's the case. The Bloc are just going to keep on. They're going to keep rabbiting on about it, aren't they? They're going to take it to court and all the rest. Much better just to do it now. Just rip the Band-Aid off. Just do it. But I mean, it seems like it's just going to drag on until they have no other choice.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. We're going to go on to the 6 Buzz TV one there, that clip there. California wants Canadians back, and they're offering 25% off hotels, attractions, activities. I was just down there in California. I stayed in the Palo Alto area, in the Silicon Valley area, actually, and it was great. Very welcoming. I felt good. Like there, you'll see some stories out there and say that how horrible it is down there, and that Canadians feel unsafe to go there. I felt great, and the border crossing was very easy, and everything was good. So there you go. You can get a deal down there. And if you're going down there, and if you want a cheap place to eat, if you're in that Palo Alto or Silicon Valley area, you go to Google's visitor center, and they got $2 coffee and $9 salad. So there you go. Or
I thought you were going to mention In-N-Out, but you resisted it.
Sorry. In-N-Out burger, decently priced, and I ate there 6 of the 7 days I was there. So there you go. Let's move on to our markets. We got a little market introduction as well here. The stock market, just kind of like that bill got passed there. Donald Trump's, Biden had the, what did he call his? The Inflation Reduction Act. And so Donald Trump has the big, beautiful bill. So it passed the House, so it's off to the Senate. So they're saying they're looking for like a July 1st kind of like passage of that bill before it heads back to the desk. They have a lot of processes in the United States compared to Canada, where they got the three branches. The Congress and the Senate, and then the executive branch. Whereas in Canada, you just prorogue government and do whatever you want.
I mean, we obviously have a Senate here, but they can be overruled, so it's not quite the same.
Bitcoin, though. Bitcoin. We'll talk about gold first. Gold just kind of chunking along there. Gold, playing in that range. But Bitcoin, the big dog on the block, broke out like we were talking about, and it is in new high territory right now. Shocker, eh?
You got to feel for those people that have they've lost the passwords to their external hard drives that have like 20,000 Bitcoin on them. Just gets worse and worse every day for those people.
Here's the important moment. So if it pushes through, like a little Friday would be a good thing to watch for. If it pushes through this 111,000, there's not a lot stopping it from going substantially higher. Like, do you know what I mean? Like technically, this thing could go into the 130, 140 range before it sees any resistance. But if it meets resistance here at this high, that could be a triple top almost. And that would be negative for it. It would probably push itself back down. So if you're a technical trader, you can take a look at that and see. But again, we've talked about this for how long we've been doing the show, that the wind is in the sails of Bitcoin with, like a favorable government down in the United States. I mean, that's the one that matters. Not just the guy in Vancouver that favors Bitcoin, the mayor, but actually the SEC and stuff like that favoring it, and a lot of the big investment firms in the United States favoring the investments in Bitcoin. I'm not going to lump. And here's this post from Zero Hedge, and this is a story that's been out there forever. The guy actually bought 2 Papa John's pizzas back in 2010, and it took him 10,000 Bitcoin to buy those pizzas because when Bitcoin was worth nothing, they were giving away Bitcoin back in that time if you attended a conference. I think they were giving you 50 Bitcoin just to show up at a conference. And a lot of, like a lot of nerds showed up there and they got their 50 Bitcoin. Probably many of them lost it though, couldn't figure it out because they thought it was worthless. Like it took 10,000 Bitcoin to buy 2 Papa John's pizza, which is now worth about, $1.1 billion, which would actually almost buy you Papa John's. Instead of 2 pizzas, you could have basically bought Papa John's, which is worth about $1.3 billion. There you go. You never know, right? There's people talking, if you listen to Michael Saylor, Cathie Wood, and stuff like that, that Bitcoin goes to $1 million and stuff like that. So Bitcoin is definitely, like I say, got the wind in its sails. Pierre Poilievre was a fan of Bitcoin, and Justin Trudeau mocked him on the Bitcoin many a time in the House there.
Yeah, and it worked because Poilievre stopped talking about it after that.
Yeah, you got shamed out of it, as usual. You got to have conviction. If you're going to call it, just stay with it. Because you know what? The thing about the stock market, you can be right and wrong in the same week.
Depending on the time.
You can be right and wrong in the same week. Canadian dollar. Still trying to figure out what it wants to do with its life. We really need to know, like, there's going to be a moment when we know if the Mark Carney, the net zero guy, is here, or Mark Carney, the guy that's going to lead to prosperity for Canada. That moment's coming. He's going to have to make a decision at some point. And that's going to be all telling. And it's going to be all telling for Daniel Smith as well.
Well, he said that he's open to, he said he's open to a lot of things, but he's sort of implied or said just about that he's open to repealing Bill C-69, for example, just as one thing. If that were to happen,
yeah,
that would
good
be
for the
an
Canadian dollar.
immediate kind of like setting the flare off, wouldn't it? That would be a real signal. But he just has to, or alternatively coming out and saying, no chance, like if that stays, then okay, that's also a signal. But yeah, right now he's kind of surfing the wave of ambiguity, isn't he? And nobody really knows.
Looks like a lot of interest on CN, although we're going to see if we can get that interview with CN and see if we can do a lot of interest on our comments there on the railroads here in Canada. The in the markets too, the pension guy for CPP, the CEO of Canada's pension plan, he did okay. He got a 24% raise. He's killing it, actually, right?
Yeah.
He got with his 24% hike, including benefits, $66.3 million. John Graham. Yeah, there you go. And
wow.
it was, it's his privilege to lead that institution. Obviously, $6.3 million says, yeah, sure, I'd do it for that as well.
So he's managing cash. He's managing $714.4 billion of assets. And they expect it to be $1 trillion in 2031. So yeah, I mean that's nearly half the size of Norway's sovereign wealth fund. So
but he's
a
not
big deal.
He's not the only guy cashing in there. So also in there, Senior Managing Director Max. I'm not going to get his big osh. $4.7 million. Oh no, so he's got 5.6, 4.7 for the Chief Investment Officer, 3.6 for the Senior Managing Director, and 1.8 for the Chief Financial Officer. Everybody, Christina Fanjoy. Any relation to the other Fanjoy? That's an unusual name, though, too, right? I don't know if is there a relation there?
Possibly. I really don't know.
Bruce Fanjoy. Why don't you ask your friend there while I'm going through this here? There you go. And by comparison, the president of the CBC got a meager $551,000. Like, they picked the wrong job. They should be running the CPP pension plan. And the Bank of Canada governor, a meager $544,000. The RCMP commissioner at $464,000. The Chief Justice of Canada, $435,000. And the poor Prime Minister Carney is only making a paltry $421,000. There you go.
It's quite generous nonetheless, isn't it?
And MPs are making $209,000, but you'll get that. You get top-ups there, though, because if you get a cabinet position, you get some big gravy top-ups, right? And then there's obviously lots of the travel and all that stuff too, right? So yeah, so that's just yeah.
I'm just looking now. ChatGPT doesn't want to tell me, doesn't want to say. It says there's no publicly available information confirming a familial relationship, but
there you go.
I don't know. I can see it. They kind of look a bit like each other. You could see relation there, but if ChatGPT doesn't know, I don't know what we can do now.
The pension fund also sank $1 billion into Tesla. This is a Holly Doan's Blacklock story as well.
Elbows up.
Tesla shares have yo-yoed a bit, but they're back up. So I would say that's a great investment if you're investing in Tesla. But it's also odd that most of the investments in the CPP are U.S. assets. There you go. And the Canada Pension Plan also, along with all the other banks, abandoned Mark Carney's net zero targets. There you go. CPP says we're moving away from these net zero, because there was that. Mark Carney led that in the world, kind of like in all those alliances he read that, kind of like mandating and forcing, not mandating, but kind of like forcing banks into this ESG stuff. And most of them have walked away from that net zero alliance already. And Canada Pension Plan walked away as well. But Mark Carney in his platform said he's going to mandate them back in. Let's see where that goes.
Are these mandates, like, when has that ever worked? But I can't take myself down that road.
And if you look at this table here, and it shows that the Canadian pension plan increases its investments into U.S. investments, now at 44% of the total. And Canada investment at a record low of 12%. But you are told that you need to buy only Canadian goods. Meanwhile, not so much. And then even for us, Bill C-18 still crushes independent media. And then they said they would never advertise with Meta. And we should update that story. The Privy Council, spending over $1 million just this in the beginning of the year when we last did this story on advertising for Meta, and Mark Carney spending well over $5 million with Meta. Supposedly the evil empire that's killing media in Canada. There you go.
Well, not only that, but apparently it's full of misinformation and far-right Nazis plotting all kinds of evil deeds. But that's where they want their message to be heard, isn't it? They want to be in among the Nazis. That's their favorite place to be.
Lining the pockets of Mark Zuckerberg. I was at the headquarters. I did not see Mark Zuckerberg out there at the front of the sign. Microsoft laying off 6,000 people amid AI restructuring. We're going to see a lot of this coming. So Microsoft, and then the Toronto Dominion Bank also laying off 2% of its workforce.
And is that related to AI as well?
I would say so, but I don't have the full details. But the banks tend to lay off all the time.
Yeah, they do, yeah. And hire quite a lot as well.
There you go. We're into our technology, transportation section. I think our intro for that should be an Optimus walking out there and like kicking the sign over or something.
In a clumsy sort of weird robotic fashion.
Google had a huge mic drop. Google had a huge mic drop event. They basically came out. They were kind of like laying in the weeds. Everybody's like, "What's with Google? What's with Google?" And I guess they came out and they're just like, "We're here." And it's
It's very impressive, wasn't it? I mean, I don't know if we've got the video, but it's a bit cringe. The guy fixing his bike. I mean, it's classic Silicon Valley cringe, but the stuff that he's doing there is pretty amazing, isn't it? Where he gets it to call the bike store and all that kind of thing. That's like quite exciting.
Yeah. And then this next slide here too. So they've got a bunch of modules that they've released, right? So definitely mic drop moment for Google, because I don't use Google much for searches, and you don't as well. But Google says that, hey, they put their hand up and says we're still relevant. Plus, they got $2 coffee at their visitor center in Mountain View and $9 Caesar salad. So,
well, they also released that AI generated video, which has audio as well. That is quite remarkable, isn't it? How smooth that runs. So, I mean.
Big day for Google.
I mean, that has implications for so many aspects of life and commerce, doesn't it?
If you end up in that Silicon Valley area, Mountain View is where Google's headquarters are. And they're spread out all over. They're all over tons and tons of buildings, but it's well worth going there. So if you go between Costco and Google for cheap eats while you're down there in that area in California and cheap hotels, the hotel prices were actually pretty reasonable. They're taking 25% off. Not so bad. The flight was a whole 2 hours from Calgary.
Should have self-driven.
I have driven there before, and it's a lot longer than 2 hours. I think it's about 22 hours or 18. I can't remember exactly, but we had some way back in the day. We had some server issues here with our company, and I had to drive back from San Fran as fast as I could, and I'm pretty sure. It's like a 20-hour drive or something like that, and I made it in one shot.
Wow! Oh Christ, that's tough.
Yeah, I was actually Anyway,
at least it's beautiful though. I mean, going up Highway 1 or whatever, that's a nice place to be, isn't it? I once drove across Texas, east to west, and about 15 hours or something, and I don't know if anyone's ever done that, but there's not a lot to look at. Just loads of wind turbines and like ranches, like desert-y looking ranches. I'd much rather have been in California.
So I drove from Houston all the way to Kelowna a long time ago, and yeah, you're right. Like Texas is big, like it's massive, and there's a lot of nothing to see.
Yeah, a lot of just like barbed wire. And
You think it's...
those, what are they, springboks or something? Those like deer, you can see them, but that's about it really.
You think driving through the prairies is, at least you see farmland. It's a lot of just sand and stuff. Yeah, a lot of nothing. Anyway.
No, it's tough. It's tough.
We got a clip here. If you want some cheap flights, check this out. They got new standing airplane seats. That's like treating you like cattle. Here you go. I'm going to play this clip here.
Enough space for a premium that at that point can be added. And on the rear you can have these seats, Skyrider 2.0, allowing you to have, of course, instead of a full eco low-cost carrier, a 3 classes low-cost carrier.
And what has the interest from the airline companies been for Skyrider V 2.0?
The next step will be to have a full aircraft equipped with the seats. So at that point you are able to increase a lot the number of passengers, and this means much more revenues for the airlines. So is
There you go. You can go from boarding time of like 20 minutes to like 2.5 hours because you're gonna put like 3 times more.
That guy is almost as interesting to listen to as Mark Carney, isn't he? He's got a very good voice.
I was gonna give him he's Klaus Schwab, like he's just like more revenue for the airlines and less for you. Standing room only. Maybe they give you a bag so you can't even use the washroom, and like wow. I just think, how long it takes to board an airplane now? Like, it's just how long it'll take then. You can't take a bag on an airplane now if you don't want to pay. Those people, when they first started charging for the understow baggage, and they started carrying like 3 carry-ons and take them forever to walk down the aisles. Now that's kind of like been stopped because people now have to pay for that as well. And
got paid to sit next to your child as well now, haven't you?
Now it's just standing. Basically, there's the leaning post. Right? It's almost like rail system. Just cram them in there. There you go.
It really breaks your heart when you look at those old photographs from like the 60s or whatever, where they're sitting on
smoking on the plane.
Yeah, like a plane or a train, and it's just like the dignity on offer. It's just it's like, I mean, even first class nowadays comes nowhere near the amount of space and dignity they had in the 60s, just in normal class.
Yeah, there you go. Unless you're on a United Arab Emirates flight in first class where you got your own room, basically a bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, there's like super duper ultimate class, isn't there, where you get like a bed. But a lot of the first class ones nowadays, they're those weird little like booths, aren't they? And they like move in, and you have this little sort of, it's kind of like a really crap office where you have your little office space, but they don't look all that good to me, to be honest. I would rather be on a plane in the 60s.
Yeah, with all that smoke.
Exactly. Just get my nicotine in.
Yeah, now they're even getting cheaper on what they hand out for free and stuff like that too, right? I can remember
a couple of nuts. Well, you don't get nuts anymore, do you? Because of what might be one person with a nut allergy, so nobody can have nuts. You get a pretzel, don't you?
I have a WestJet rewards card, and we ended up flying to Hawaii this a number of years ago and using your companion flight. And sitting in it's not first class, premium class. So you get there's only 6 seats in the premium class, and they just have a curtain there that kind of holds you back. And then, it's a longer flight, 5 or 6 hours. And then the people in whatever the other class, the normal class, were trying to use the washroom up front because there's only one washroom in the back, and there's, or maybe there's 2 in the back, I don't know. But they wanted to use the one in the front. They got into a big argument over it, and they finally let the children start to use the washroom up front.
Should have demanded a refund.
Anyway, we got a picture of a video of Optimus here cleaning your house. There you go.
Not too smooth.
Optimus is now learning tasks by watching videos, though. Pretty impressive. And by texting.
Yeah.
So.
You're being called out there, Jim. Never flown coach in your life? You aristocrat.
I have flown coach most of my life, and I just said that I used the companion flight to go to Hawaii. And again, WestJet, the premium seats are, obviously a little better than the economy class or whatever they want to call it. But I flew lots for them when I worked at the mine site, and I think I was in the air once a week, and I flew and sometimes it took 3 flights to get to the mine site, from Kelowna to Calgary, Calgary to Winnipeg, Winnipeg to Thompson, and all of those were it's like the lottery. You're in the back there, in the back of the plane, and then you're watching as people, because you're flying single because you're going to work, and you're just watching people walk by, and you're just like, no, 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 please, no, no. And then I can remember sometimes I go direct to Toronto, and you end up sitting in the 3 seats. And I remember once a couple of farmers got on the plane, a couple, and they broke out the liverwurst sandwiches. Like, the smell from those sandwiches just about made me want to retch into the vomit bag. It was so bad. And they offered me a sandwich, though. They've offered me a sandwich, and then it's just so many flights. It actually was killing my calves. I just couldn't even take it anymore. Like, just too much time in the air. So there you go. I have flown many, many. And Comair flights are just those little twin prop jobbies. Like, if you want to fly bush pilot stuff like that, that's like taking, you got to have some courage for that kind of stuff. Anyway, and also Figure just completed a 20-hour shift, back-to-back shifts at BMW's X3 line. So they got to actually, Figure's bringing a little clip here from Figure, which is a competitor to Optimus. There you go. That's good. So there you go. So Figure working in the factory. So they've got lots of Optimuses in the factory floor there too, with Tesla too, or they're working on them. So, and then not to be outdone.
If that's the future of manufacturing, then maybe Canada really can have a manufacturing sector. Because the biggest obstacle is high pay now, isn't it? But if you can get all these robots, just pay them with electricity.
Well, I mean, we've also, the Canadian government has disenfranchised Elon Musk, so
he won't sell them.
We might be last on the list of things to get. Elon Musk, with his new name there, Kikius Maximus, says there's a major upgrade to Grok coming as well. So this thing's starting to heat up. Lots of really big stuff. I've been using the video component with ChatGPT when you're doing things like analyzing golf swings, and even when I'm working out, it analyzes some of your positioning first for like when you're doing a squat and all kinds of stuff. It's just absolutely wild.
I mean, it's going crazy, isn't it? But I feel like Grok, I don't know, there's a lot of big announcements coming lately. I mean, we're going to talk about the OpenAI thing with Johnny Ive in a second. There's that. And then there's Google that look like they're for real now. Look like they've finally pulled something out of the bag. I think Grok, they haven't had a big moment in a while. And then Apple, obviously, God, they're in last place, aren't they? But the competition is red hot now, for sure.
I think in last place would be the two of them neck and neck, Amazon's Alexa and Google's Siri. Like, I mean, I think that they're definitely... They're the two of them wearing the dunce cap, and I have no idea what they're both trying to do there.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon what did they spend, $1 billion or something on that Lord of the Rings TV show, which was absolute garbage that everybody despises. Like, instead of that, maybe you should have made Alexa like slightly less brain dead. I mean, it's so painful, isn't it? Trying to get it to play a song. I mean, it's just a nightmare.
Johnny Ives. Made famous with the iPhone stuff. Johnny Ives makes a big deal, $6.5 billion deal. Johnny Ives joins the billionaires. Hey?
Well, they've released a video on social media. Well, I saw it on X, and it's Sam Altman and Johnny Ive sat down in a bar in San Francisco chatting about everything. And it's as usual, like I say, with Silicon Valley, it's extremely cringe-inducing. But it's quite interesting what they talk about, because they're talking about how the basic premise is that it just takes too long to like interface with a laptop or interface with an iPhone or whatever it is to try and activate AI. And they're saying that they've invented this product, which is a secret that they're not going to tell us about, that makes it so that it's a lot more, it's a lot more rapid to interface with AI, which is very, very interesting. And, like a lot of people in Silicon Valley, they seem to think that the world is like on the cusp of an enormous change, and it's going to happen very soon.
So if you watch there's a couple of Steve Jobs movies out there, and Johnny Ives plays his character or whatever, plays a pretty big role in Steve Jobs' comeback. And he's an English dude as well. There you go.
He's an English dude, and he went to a very unfashionable university in England, in the north of England. And I always find that very funny, that, his credentials, because we're in a country that absolutely worships credentials. His credentials are not very good at all, really. Not very impressive at all. And yet he's one of the more consequential figures in the world of technology over the last sort of 30 years at least.
And if you watch
it's sort of amusing, isn't it? When you look at like Champagne, our boy Champagne, or Melanie Jolie, just look at those credentials, Jim. Oh, amazing credentials. And yet they've achieved nothing, not a thing. Whereas Johnny Ive, not so great credentials, has achieved more than Melanie Jolie could achieve in 1,000 lifetimes.
It was the moment, like if you watch that movie, when Steve Jobs made his return, like after being disgraced and fired from his own company. I don't know if you remember that. He was actually fired, and the fired by the guy that was the CEO of selling sugar water people. He hired that guy.
Off to Nike, didn't he? Nike.
No, it was a Coca-Cola guy.
No, but didn't Jobs go off to Nike?
What's that? Yeah. No, but the guy that they hired that actually fired Jobs was the guy that was running Coca-Cola, selling sugar water. And then Steve Jobs got his revenge when they needed him back after they turned that thing into a bunch of sugar water. And then that chance meeting there, or not chance meeting, but when he met Johnny Ive there in the movie, says he says, I'll give you the ability to design what you want to design. And there you go. Johnny delivered, and not just an employee. Obviously, he's ringing the cash register right now as well.
Indeed.
So, England not only producing great songwriters and singers, and musicians, I should say, artists like the Beatles. Johnny Ive, the iPhone. The iPhone is one of the most influential devices in our century, for sure. Do you know what I mean? The iPhone changed everything. Like, and I'll try to do this real quick. The iPhone, when the newspapers are the printing press, and then radio, and then television, and the internet and all those things all kind of like coexist. But the iPhone kind of came along, and it kind of kills a whole bunch of industries at once. Even the news industry completely disrupted, right? Because why do you need a newspaper? You have a newspaper in your hand. Look at everything the iPhone does. And I don't know if you remember that moment when Steve Jobs walked on stage and said, I've got 3 devices to show you, a phone, an internet browser, and a music player. And he said, actually, I only have 1. Everything was in the palm of your hand. And I can't remember what it was, like thousands of songs. It actually has a phone, it's a compass, it's a light. You have an alarm. No, most people don't have an alarm clock anymore. Most people don't even wear a wristwatch. The phone is everything to everybody, right? You could probably rob somebody, and they'd probably give you their clothing before they give you their phone.
Yeah, well, it's everything, isn't it? Steve Jobs as well. He's another person that didn't have very impressive credentials at all, and yet, like you say, vastly influential person. It is interesting, isn't it? And that's something that they do in America. I would argue a lot better than we do here in Canada. They take these people that are obviously of great value, and they convert them into very powerful and influential figures, whereas in Canada that doesn't seem to happen quite as often.
Ian Leslie there saying that we've been watching the CRTC committee hearings because the government has choked us with Bill C-18 taking away our audience of Facebook and Instagram. And we are worried about Bill C-63 and what it'll do. So if that's what Canadians are happy with, where the government has one media outlet left that is beholding and compromised to the Liberal government, then don't raise your voice, just let it happen. There you go. Honda is reducing its EV investment. We know that, we talked about that already. It's basically scaling back and focusing on hybrids. Imagine that, eh? And then we're into the big part of the show. This is the best part of the show. Say, there you go. Where do you get a job like this? Backbencher gets $211,000. Minister gets $311,000. And look at the days you have to work. They're just the green ones are the working days.
It's a little bit. It's difficult to swallow, isn't it? Lately, just because of how little work they've actually put in over the last sort of 12 months or so. They have to rectify that, because they're the ones telling us that we're in a crisis that will decide whether or not we exist as a country and all the rest of it. So yeah, well, maybe it would help if they worked.
They're going to be telling us that Bill C-63 is so important to the security and safety of Canadians, and that they'll need to silence.
And that's a priority. That's a greater priority than the economy, cost of living, and housing, and all the rest of it. Military. Because if they do that, if they do push that through, any goodwill that, for example, the Conservative Party has right now towards the Liberals, and I think it's true that they do. Poilievre is being quite sort of accommodating and friendly to the Liberals right now, but any of that will just be burned up instantly, and it'll start. Parliament will go back to what it was under Trudeau. It'll be very shouty and aggressive, because if they prioritize one of their pet ideological projects, like censoring the internet, if they prioritize that over the economy or anything else that's actually serious, then that's gonna set the country on fire. I think it's gonna make a lot of people very angry.
You and I can scream into a bucket then, maybe.
Maybe we'll claim refuge in the US, and then we'll broadcast. We'll broadcast in on like what did they used to do? Shortwave radios.
They've taken away our Facebook and Instagram, and people should be screaming about this. Bill C-18 is literally killing independent media in Canada. Without independent voices, we'll have the CBC and the CTV left, and they'll be taking checks and giving themselves not bonuses anymore, just raises, just pulling the fat right off the calf. And they'll probably be reading that story from the CPP and saying, we only get $500,000 a year. This is ridiculous. Well, that guy's getting $6.5 million. They are clearly underpaid. There you go. And then this is how the media in the US frames a lot of stuff, including in Canada. They're definitely, depending on what they're looking at, they look at a guy that can only hit 30% of the time is that he couldn't hit the ball 70% of the time. Because they're saying, right now, like Doge has only found, I think, $150 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse. And they promised $1 trillion. What a failure. Just like, well, billions of dollars.
Wasn't it $2 trillion, I thought?
Anyway, it's supposed to go
guy? Who's this baseball player? He looks a bit like Tom Hanks.
It does look like Tom Hanks. Must be AI generated and Tom Hanks kind of thing there. And then
I know nothing about baseball. Maybe it's some like legend. Maybe one of our listeners or viewers can tell us who it is.
And this is the Are You Serious section, so keep in mind that we're just trying to have a little fun here. Brian Lilly's put out a tweet there saying, when it comes to the impact of the carbon tax, let's face it, Liberals lied to us for years. And plenty of people, including the Canadian media, were happy to eat up those lies. Well, not even happy to eat up those lies. Actually, calling out people that dared. What did they call you? Climate denier. Whole bunch of names. The names are good, right? That is what the media did in the States and the media did in Canada. They made up anti-vaxxer, which was a name of hate. We actually said to our reporters that they're not to use those terms or to spread hate and misinformation about people. But labels.
But I mean, look at the blowback that they've experienced after doing that. It hasn't been a success, has it? So I would be quite surprised if they persisted with this behavior, because it seems to just, if anything, it just like radicalizes people, doesn't it? It really backfires.
I think that there's so much distrust in the media, and like I said, there's lots of bigger names in the States right now saying turn them off. Like CNN and MSNBC have really embarrassed themselves, and I would say the CBC. We've watched it. We've watched Rosie Barton spew misinformation while she's talking about somebody else's misinformation.
Well, I listen to it's almost like an act of masochism, or I do it as like a sociological experiment. I listen to CBC Radio Ottawa, every morning, and it is just, I mean, if I didn't find it so funny on one level, I would cry probably, like particularly the way that they crowbar into absolutely everything every single day. They crowbar Palestine and Israel into stories, and it's just like, how are you going to do it this time? Today they were like talking about some film that had come out. They have their own film reviewer. It's like, we're going to go to the CBC Ottawa movie reviewer, and they have like a restaurant reviewer. Obviously they're quite flush with cash if they can afford people like that. But obviously it was a film about Palestine. You know, it's like they're so disconnected from the mass population of Canada, like the majority of people in Canada. They're just in a bubble of their own creation.
And there you go. Somebody put up a meme about we're not sure how much Rosie Barton and David Cochrane get paid. We should try and find that out. That should be public information too, because it is a public broadcaster.
It probably is public, yeah, if you're interested to investigate. I think that's a bit harsh on David Cochrane there. He's nowhere near as bad as Rosie Barton.
Well, she's higher level.
He's a cut above.
She's clearly above, right?
I mean, I think that's just because she's been around forever. Maybe that's it. And it's just like one of those organizations where time served equals, you know, promotion sort of thing. But David Cochrane, he makes a fool out of himself now and then, but I'd feel bad for old Davey to think he was being put in the same bracket as Rosie, who is just ludicrous, really.
Yeah, one of the viewers there said there's no batting helmet on the ball player. Well, likely it looks like more like a pose of a baseball card where you got the gum and the O-Peachy pack or something like that. There you go. And then the last one we have for today, I mean, hey, this fits right in.
I mean, AI is just, it's kind of got a bit of Carney, but it's not quite Carney, is it? It's very uncanny valley, that.
It's enough there. I know when we did we did some of our own, we created some when they were doing the taco and tinsel GST break there. We had Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau there sipping on beers and eating taco chips on a couch there, enjoying the GST break.
Yeah, that was a good one.
There you go. That's it for our show today, the really big show. Hopefully Bill 63 doesn't take this away from us as well. Look at that, we got new graphics. Anyway, we're gonna be back tomorrow for the last show of the week, and it'll be a little bit later though. It'll be at 9:30 because we have something else going on. I do have Renee Merrifield in at 11:30, and we're going to talk politics as usual. She usually has lots good to say. She's well connected as well. Looks like I got a bigger box than you. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, what the hell's going on? I need to be taller than you. I'm gonna get up bigger. We didn't mention, by the way, that Mark Carney. This is a really interesting story that I've checked around and no one else is reporting on this, and I don't know why. But a minister of the Israeli government has accused Mark Carney in Canada of having contributed to the killing of those Israeli embassy staff in Washington last night, which is quite crazy. You know, a minister of the Israeli government has name dropped Mark Carney and said because of like the cowardice of people like Mark Carney, you know, people feel emboldened to commit these terror attacks. I mean, that's a massive scandal as far as I'm concerned. But
So some of
according
those
to
things,
the rest of the press, it's not.
It's some of the things like what the left has been doing in the United States, like, the killing of that CEO, shooting him in the back, and then glorifying this guy for shooting somebody in the back. And then the, like the burning of Teslas and, like the, like firebombing and all this stuff. It just seems absolutely ludicrous. And now this, right? Like, like even some of the...
He will be venerated, this guy, for sure. He'll be venerated for doing this.
And then, like even, like the actually elected officials breaking into ICE detention centers and that, like, and doxing ICE agents.
But if you this is the thing, that there are consequences to the kind of education that people are given nowadays at universities in particular. There are consequences to telling people that Israel's committing a genocide in Palestine and all the rest of it, and that it's a structurally racist society here in the West, and that actually the land belongs to various tribes and all that stuff, and that there was a genocide committed to create Canada and the US. There are consequences to that, because eventually you'll get somebody that is narrow-minded enough, simple-minded enough, like this guy, to swallow it all and then act on it. Because, I mean, how would you feel if you were told there is a genocide taking place against like your people, your ethnic group, whatever? There's a genocide going on and it's being sponsored by all these people and they're killing you, they're wiping you out, they're pure evil. Like, what would you do? I mean, if that was really happening, surely it would be a positive deed to go out and kill people in that scenario. And, lo and behold, you have these freaks that go out and do this kind of thing.
I think again, the media, especially the ones that were favoring the Democrats and the liberals, have a lot of soul searching to do, because they compromised themselves and they used all this rhetoric of this hatred of Donald Trump to justify their actions, to break their journalistic integrity, to cover up that scandal in the United States. That's huge. And the stuff that was happening here in Canada as well, with COVID and all that. And there's a lot more coming out with that right now. A lot of people have some... There's going to be stuff coming out in the next little while that is going to make people wonder how to trust media. And you can't trust media that is begging or beholding to one political party that keeps feeding them crumbs, or in the case of the CBC, they don't get the crumbs. The other media outlets get the crumbs. The CBC gets a frothing bowl of just the trough, I guess you could say, right? The CBC gets the trough.
They get the loaf.
They get the trough and the loaf, and then everybody else gets whatever falls off the table for them. And then a lot of the other outlets basically get choked off and saying, like, what are you talking about? We're here to help you. Well, they have their foot on your throat, choking you.
And while they knock out clearly partisan content of a very dubious standard, it's not exactly like it's not like it's great stuff,
There you go. We'll be back tomorrow, and until they, I don't know, who knows what they'll do next, but we're here till then. Watch the sources you trust and shut the other ones off. That's it. Shut them off. Unfollow them. Just like Sean Hannity said in the US and Stephen A. Smith, that's enough. If they're not going to tell you the truth, why are you listening to them? With that said, have a great day, and thank you for watching NowMedia.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.